I live in the state of Washington in the Pacific Northwest. I used to work at a late-night diner on the side of the highway. I was 29 years old. I worked the closing shift pretty often. The diner would close at 2 in the morning, which was incredibly late considering how scarcely populated the area is. But even so, given the proximity to the highway, there would usually be at least 1 or 2 customers in the building until closing time. Having grown up in the South and moved up here, I can tell you, the people are different. In the South, there's a huge emphasis on hospitality and small talk. But up here, people are kind but not overly friendly. I feel like the air lends itself more to introversion. I used to be a waitress down south, and I'm telling you from experience, the customers were a lot chattier down there. Up here, people seem to want to keep to themselves a little more. This was approaching closing time. The kitchen's last call was at 2, technically. Even though the diner was advertised to close at 2, it was really frowned upon if a customer would come in and order something that late. But it did happen. It happened that night, as a matter of fact. There were only 2 employees in the building, myself and the chef. It was like 1:50 in the morning. And in comes a lone, heavy-set man. He was wearing awkwardly high jeans, a gray shirt tucked in, a brown jacket, and he had a brown mustache and glasses. I asked him if he'd like to sit at the bar or a table, and he asked for a table. He kept smiling the whole time, so I smiled back. I gave him a menu and informed him the kitchen closes in 10 minutes. He looked at the menu for a few seconds and then said he'd like a black coffee and some French toast. Around this time, he also introduced himself as Nolan. Luckily, his order was simple enough. I went into the kitchen and told the chef the order, who still had a slightly annoyed face and reaction, which I just responded to with, "I know." I stepped back out to the dining area and Nolan waved me over. As I neared, he struck up a conversation with me, something rather unusual for folk around here at this hour. He asked me if I was from the area and started complaining about all the potholes in the road around here. I responded, "Yeah, it's all the freezes we get in the winter, basic small talk." I did tell him that I'm from around here, and he perhaps pressed a bit too specifically about where I was from. I told him a vague general area. I never tell people exactly where I live, obviously. He said he just moved to town not too long ago. As he spoke, I analyzed his body language and character in general. He seemed like a somewhat nerdy older guy, and this may have been his idea of flirting. Didn't bother me much, though. I dealt with it back home in the South all the time, so I was used to it. Since this was the last customer of the night, the chef personally came out and placed his food on the counter. I went to grab it and bring it to Nolan. By this point, he had his food and coffee, and everything else was about ready to close up shop. I wiped down the counters and tables and everything already. I stayed behind the counter a little further away from Nolan because I was tired of conversing with him. My social energy was drained, and I was ready to get home and go to sleep. When he finally finished his food, I went to drop off his check before he even asked for it, politely non-verbally implying that we were closed and we wanted to get home. He paid by card, and then he left. The chef would be the one closing up the place. So after cleaning Nolan's table and gathering all my belongings, I said goodbye to the guy working in the kitchen and walked out to my car. There were 3 cars in the lot, mine, the chef's, and a third one that I couldn't explain. It was a silver, older-looking car, like a 2005 Toyota or Audi or something. I wasn't sure. I also couldn't tell if the windows were tinted or if it was just so dark out that I couldn't see into the car. But I wasn't able to tell if someone was in the car or not. It was parked on the dirt closest to the highway. I wondered if it was Nolan's car. I got in my car and started heading home. The diner to my home is about 20 minutes. I was on the highway when a ding came from my dashboard and the tire pressure screen popped up. I started freaking out. I didn't know how to change a tire. I'd never even called my roadside assistance company. I was still a decent way from home. The tire pressure in my rear passenger side tire was dropping rather rapidly all of a sudden from 20 down to 10. And then I started feeling not just the steering wheel shake but the entire car shake. I had to pull off the road. I came to a stop and got out of the car real quick to look at the tire, and it was as flat as could be. Suddenly, as if they were just flicked on, a pair of headlights lit up the side of the road as it approached me, then slowing to a stop. I hurried back inside my car and locked the door. I truly didn't know what to do. and then there was a light tap at my... I looked up and saw Nolan, the man from the restaurant. He waved at me with a smile. He was wearing gloves now. For the sake of the story, I'll use a fake name for myself. Nolan said through the window, "Kathy, is that you? Are you okay?" He laughed, acting like it was such a coincidence. I felt a knot in my stomach suddenly. I instantly knew he did this. I'm not a dumbass. He motioned for me to lower the window. I lowered it literally maybe 2 inches, just enough to speak through. He asked if I needed help. I told him I had a flat tire. He played dumb, asking me which one. I said the back passenger side. He started walking over to the other side, and at this moment I dialed 911 on my phone. I let the phone sit on my lap as Nolan walked back to my side. He said through the window with his creepy smile that he knows how to change a flat. He asked me to step out of the car, and I said, "I'm waiting for my boyfriend to come and help me change it." During all of this, I heard the 911 operator speaking into the phone, but it wasn't loud enough for Nolan to hear it. I tried to make it as clear as possible my situation to the operator without being too obvious for Nolan to catch on. I basically said, "I'm not sure how I got a flat, but I'm waiting for my boyfriend to come help me change it. Thanks for offering to help, sir." He stood there for a second with a much less friendly look on his face. Then he walked away from the window. I took this opportunity to speak very quietly into the phone that this man slashed my tire and he's trying to get me out of the car. The operator asked my location, and I quickly opened the map on my phone and told her the name of the road I pulled off onto. The deafening shattering of glass immediately to my left made me scream as shards of glass fell onto my lap. I screamed at the top of my lungs at the man. "I'm on the phone with the police. It's the police." As I showed him the phone screen, he looked at my screen and then reached inside the car. I screamed again at the top of my lungs as I was hysterically crying, expecting him to try and grab me or choke me. But instead, he grabbed my phone and launched it in the direction of the highway. He then ran back to his car and sped off down the dark road. I heard the screeching of his tires as he made a sharp right turn and then disappeared. I wanted to go look for my phone, but with no flashlights in the car, I'd be running out there to look in the pitch dark. The only light was from my car. I had no choice but to wait and pray that Nolan, or whatever his real name was, didn't come back. I'm very grateful that I was able to tell the 911 operator my location in time. I heard the unmistakable sound of police sirens in the distance, and I started to cry tears of joy when I realized they were getting closer. I got out of my car and started waving my arms in the air until I saw the flashing lights turn off the highway onto this random road. Pretty soon, a second police car showed up, and then a third. During all this time, we found my phone, which was completely destroyed. I described the man to them along with his car and pointed the direction in which he went. One of the police officers left in that direction as they also put the word out on their radio. They were honestly the nicest cops I'd ever met in my life. They changed my tire for me, and one of them even gave me an escort home, having me follow from behind. The main officer told me that they would investigate the video surveillance from the diner and keep me updated with any news. I got a call a week later from that officer informing me that the investigation was still ongoing based on the surveillance footage. That was the last I'd heard of it. I don't think they caught him, sadly. I never returned to that diner job again after that night. I was not risking that man ever finding me.